The sun dipped low over the horizon as the city's wealthiest elite gathered for yet another lavish evening at the prestigious Corinthian Club. Among them was Vincent Hale, a millionaire known not only for his staggering fortune, but also for his reputation as a man of charm and arrogance. His life was a whirlwind of fast cars, grand parties, and empty relationships. For Vincent, everything was a game, and everyone was a piece on his chessboard. On this particular evening, Vincent found himself in a heated debate with his closest friends. They were a group of equally affluent individuals who thrived on dares, challenges, and wagers that tested their wealth and audacity. Tonight's topic of discussion: love, or more precisely, the lack of it in their social circle. "You're all too predictable," Vincent scoffed, swirling the golden liquid in his crystal glass. "You marry for status, for beauty, for convenience. None of you would dare to marry someone outside your league." The room erupted in laughter, one of his friends retorting, "And you would?" "Please, Vincent, the man who breaks hearts like it's a sport?" Vincent smirked, his ego inflating with the challenge. "I would. In fact, I'd marry someone who has nothing. No wealth, no beauty, no connections. Someone utterly unremarkable." A silence fell over the group before one of them, Charles, leaned forward with a mischievous grin. "Prove it. I'll bet you $5 million you won't marry someone like that." The room buzzed with excitement as the challenge was laid. Vincent, always the one to outshine, raised his glass. "Deal. By the end of the month, I'll be married to someone who fits your description, and I'll do it without hesitation." The very next day, Vincent set out to fulfill the outrageous bet. He roamed the city's streets, seeking someone who would fit the criteria, someone overlooked by society, someone who wouldn't dream of ever marrying a man of his stature. That's when he saw her. Sitting on the steps of an old rundown church was a woman dressed in tattered clothing. Her face bore the signs of hardship, her hair disheveled, and her hands roughened by years of struggle. She clutched a small, worn bag close to her chest, as though it contained her entire world. Vincent approached her, his tailored suit and polished demeanor creating a stark contrast. "Hello," he said, flashing a disarming smile. The woman looked up, her eyes wary. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "What's your name?" he inquired, lowering himself to sit beside her. "Rose," she replied hesitantly. "Well, Rose, I have a proposition for you," Vincent began, his voice smooth. "How would you like to marry me?" Her laughter rang out, bitter and incredulous. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," Vincent said firmly. "I'm serious. Marry me, and you'll have everything you could ever dream of: a home, security, and wealth beyond your imagination." Rose stared at him, her expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Why would someone like you want to marry someone like me?" Vincent hesitated for the briefest of moments before answering. "Let's just say I believe in giving people second chances." After much persuasion, and with little to lose, Rose reluctantly agreed. Vincent had found his bride, and the first step of his bet was complete. What Vincent didn't know, as they finalized their arrangements, was that Rose was no ordinary beggar. Beneath her ragged exterior was a secret that would turn Vincent's world upside down. The wedding was arranged hastily, with Vincent sparing no expense to make it a grand spectacle. It was less about love and more about showcasing his ability to pull off the impossible. Invitations were sent to the city's elite, the media caught wind of the bizarre union, and curiosity reached a fever pitch. How could a man like Vincent Hale marry a woman like Rose? As Rose stepped into the lavish wedding hall on the appointed day, she couldn't help but feel out of place. Her modest appearance clashed with the grandeur of the event. Despite being dressed in a beautiful white gown, carefully selected by Vincent's team, she still carried an air of quiet humility. The guests, dressed in their finest, whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with judgment and curiosity. Vincent, standing tall and confident at the altar, watched her approach. He saw this as nothing more than a game, another chance to show his superiority. As Rose reached him, he leaned in and whispered, Just smile and go along with it. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. The priest's words echoed through the hall, but Rose could barely focus. Her heart raced, not from excitement, but from the weight of the unknown. Who was this man she was marrying, and what did he truly want? When the vows were exchanged, Vincent's delivery was smooth and polished, but devoid of genuine emotion. Rose, on the other hand, spoke softly, her words laced with sincerity. Despite her reservations, she had decided to give this strange arrangement a chance, if only to escape her current reality. The moment Vincent slid the ring onto Rose's finger, the guests erupted into applause. Flashbulbs popped as photographers captured the surreal moment, and Vincent basked in the attention. He had won the bet, and the world was his audience. That evening, at the grand reception, Vincent's friends couldn't hide their amusement. Charles, the one who had dared Vincent in the first place, approached him with a sly grin. "Well, you did it. I'll admit, I didn't think you'd pull it off. But tell me, how long do you plan to keep this charade going?" Vincent smirked. "Long enough to prove my point. After that, I'll figure something out." Rose overheard the exchange, her stomach sinking. Though she hadn't expected a fairy tale, hearing her new husband speak of her as if she were a pawn in his game stung deeply. She retreated to a quiet corner, her eyes scanning the room filled with laughter and opulence. Later that night, in the privacy of their suite, Vincent loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. Rose stood by the window, staring out at the city lights. "Why did you do this?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. Vincent turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Does it matter? You agreed, didn't you?" Rose sighed, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. "I agreed because I had no choice. But you had every choice in the world. And yet, you chose to mock someone like me. Why?" Her words struck a chord, though Vincent quickly masked his discomfort with, "I needed to prove that I could do anything I set my mind to," Vincent said dismissively, taking a long sip of his drink. His tone was nonchalant, but deep down, her question lingered. Rose turned to face him, her calm yet piercing gaze cutting through his arrogance. "You think this is power? Marrying someone just to win a bet? That's not power, Vincent. That's weakness masked as confidence." Her words startled him. Vincent, who was used to admiration and compliance, wasn't prepared for someone to challenge him, especially not someone like Rose. He chuckled bitterly, trying to maintain his composure. "You're in no position to lecture me," he retorted. "You're the one who agreed to this arrangement." "Yes," Rose replied quietly, "because life hasn't been kind to me, but I've learned to value dignity, something you seem to lack despite all your wealth." For a moment, the room fell silent. Vincent found himself unable to respond. He was accustomed to superficial interactions, people who laughed at his jokes and praised his achievements. But Rose was different. Her quiet strength unsettled him, and for the first time in years, he felt the stirrings of self-reflection. That night, as Vincent lay in the massive bed and Rose took the couch without complaint, he found himself staring at the ceiling. Her words replayed in his mind, challenging the very foundation of his ego. The next morning, Vincent woke to find Rose already up, sitting by the window with a book in her hands. She looked peaceful, as though she'd found a moment of solace amid the chaos of her new reality. "Why are you so calm?" Vincent blurted out, unable to contain his curiosity. Rose looked up, her eyes meeting his. "Because I know who I am, Vincent, and I know that no matter what happens, I'll survive. Can you say the same?" Her question hung in the air, unspoken, but deeply felt. Vincent didn't have an answer. For the first time, he wondered if all his success and bravado were a shield. Hiding over the next few days, Vincent found himself observing Rose more closely. Despite her humble background and the mockery she faced from his friends and guests, she carried herself with a quiet grace that left him unsettled. She wasn't bitter or vengeful. Instead, she approached her new life with resilience and dignity, something he found himself secretly admiring. One evening, Vincent returned home from a business meeting to find Rose in the library of his grand estate. She wasn't admiring the opulence of the room, but rather engrossed in a stack of books on history and philosophy. "You read a lot," Vincent said, leaning against the doorframe. Rose glanced up, her expression neutral. "Books have always been my escape. They remind me that there's more to life than what we see in front of us." Intrigued, Vincent walked into the room and sat down across from her. "What are you escaping from?" he asked, his tone softer than usual. Rose hesitated, then replied, "From a world that judges people like me, without ever knowing their stories. From a life that never gave me a fair chance." Her honesty struck a chord in Vincent. For the first time, he began to see Rose not as a pawn in his game, but as a person with dreams, struggles, and a strength he couldn't ignore. As the days turned into weeks, Vincent found himself spending more time with Rose. He asked her questions about her life, her interests, and her aspirations. In return, she challenged his worldview, forcing him to confront the shallowness of his past actions. One night, during a quiet dinner, Rose finally asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Why did you marry me, Vincent?" "Beyond the bet, why did you really do it?" Vincent hesitated, his usual confidence faltering. "I don't know," he admitted. "At first it was just a joke, a way to prove I could do anything, but now, I'm not so sure anymore." Rose nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You know, Vincent, you have the power to change your life, but that starts with admitting what you truly want, not what others expect of you." Her words lingered with him long after the conversation ended. For the first time, Vincent began to question everything: his wealth, his choices, and the emptiness he felt despite having it all. One evening, Vincent gathered his closest friends, including Charles, the man who had dared him to marry Rose. He stood before them, his expression serious. "I made a mistake," he began. "This bet, this marriage, it started as a joke. But Rose has shown me more strength and grace than I've ever seen in anyone. I don't care what any of you think anymore. She's my wife, and I owe her the respect she deserves." The room fell silent. Charles smirked, but Vincent ignored him. For once, he didn't care about the opinions of others. Later that night, Vincent approached Rose in the living room. "I want to start over," he said earnestly. "No more games, no more pretenses. I want to be a better person, and I want to earn your trust." Rose studied him for a long moment, then offered a small, genuine smile. "We'll see, Vincent. Actions speak louder than words." From that day forward, Vincent began to change. He donated a significant portion of his wealth to charity, spent time mentoring young entrepreneurs, and made an effort to reconnect with the people in his life. Slowly but surely, he earned Rose's respect, and eventually, her love. In the end, the bet that had started as a mockery turned into a lesson Vincent would never forget. Rose taught him that true wealth wasn't measured by money, but by character, humility, and the connections we make with others. Together, they built a life that was no longer defined by arrogance or appearances, but by mutual respect and genuine love. Their life together continued to evolve, and Vincent's transformation only deepened. Rose became an integral part of his world, not as an accessory, but as an equal. The once timid and humble woman proved to be sharp, insightful, and capable of managing not only her life, but also contributing significantly to Vincent's business empire. Vincent began bringing Rose to his business meetings and social events, proudly introducing her as his wife. Initially, the same high society individuals who had laughed at Rose struggled to accept her presence. Yet, over time, her intelligence, wit, and warmth won over even the most critical skeptics. One day, during a charitable gala they co-hosted, a woman from Vincent's past, a former flame who had once been dismissive of Rose, approached them. "Rose, I misjudged you," she said, her voice laced with genuine regret. "You're remarkable. The two of you are an inspiration." Rose accepted the apology with grace, her humility never faltering. But later that evening, she teased Vincent. "You see? Even the elite can admit when they're wrong. Vincent chuckled, pulling her close. It's because they see what I've always known, that you're extraordinary. Their love story began to inspire others. Articles were written about Vincent's transformation and Rose's rise from poverty to prominence. But what truly captured the public's attention was their relentless commitment to giving back. Together, they launched initiatives to support underprivileged communities, fund education programs, and provide opportunities to those who had been overlooked, just as Rose once was. Years later, at their anniversary celebration, Vincent made a heartfelt speech. Surrounded by friends, family, and the countless lives they had touched, he raised a glass to his wife. "I once made a bet that changed my life," he said, his voice steady with emotion. "But the real gamble wasn't marrying Rose. It was believing I could become someone worthy of her. Thank you, my love, for teaching me what it means to truly live." Rose, with tears in her eyes, smiled at Vincent. "And thank you for seeing me, not for where I came from, but for who I am." Their story became a testament to the power of love, redemption, and the courage to change. It wasn't just about a wealthy man and a poor woman defying the odds. It was a story of two souls who found in each other the strength to become better and to leave the world a little brighter than they had found it. As the years passed, Vincent and Rose's story became a beacon of hope and transformation. Their marriage, once the subject of ridicule and gossip, evolved into a tale celebrated for its profound impact on society. Together they proved that love, when rooted in respect and understanding, has the power to transcend class, appearances, and prejudice. One fateful evening, Vincent and Rose hosted a grand charity event in their mansion, an annual tradition that had become the highlight of the social calendar. The event raised millions for causes close to their hearts, including shelters for the homeless, scholarships for underprivileged students, and support programs for women facing adversity. Guests from all walks of life attended, not just the wealthy elite, but also those whose lives had been directly touched by the couple's generosity. During the event, Vincent stood on the stage to address the attendees. His speech was heartfelt and raw, his gratitude for Rose shining in every word. "Years ago, I entered into a foolish bet, one driven by ego and arrogance. I thought wealth was everything, that people's worth could be measured by the labels they wore or the rooms they walked into. Then I met Rose, and she taught me what true richness is: compassion, humility, and love." He turned to Rose, who stood beside him, radiant as ever. "Rose didn't just change my life. She saved it. She showed me the kind of man I could be, and for that, I will always be grateful. Tonight, we celebrate not just the causes we support, but the incredible strength of the human spirit. The belief that anyone, no matter where they come from, can rise and make a difference." The room erupted in applause, but the most moving moment came when a young woman stepped forward to speak. She was a scholarship recipient who had gone on to become a successful doctor. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Because of Rose and Vincent, I'm here today. They didn't just give me a chance, they gave me hope." The evening was a resounding success, but for Vincent and Rose, the true victory lay in the lives they had touched. As they danced under the glittering chandeliers, Vincent whispered to Rose, "You've made me the richest man in the world, not because of what we have, but because of who I've become with you by my side." Rose smiled, her eyes sparkling with tears. "And you've shown me that love isn't about where we start, but how far we're willing to go for each other." Their story, once defined by a reckless bet, had transformed into a legacy of love, growth, and kindness. Vincent and Rose proved to the world and to themselves that the most valuable treasures are the ones you build together, brick by brick, heart by heart, until they stand as a testament to the beauty of the human spirit.